pay grave robbers to get fresh corpses so they could study anatomy. And this was during a long time, this was the only way in which this could actually happen. Now, I said we were going to talk a little bit about Jolly Rogers. Jolly Roger is the emblematic flag. We all know it, the skull with bones crossed below. And but this is sort of like a default. But the big pirates in history had their own versions of the Jolly Roger. So Blackbeard had his own version, as we mentioned. Roger. This one, I'm going to show you some things. We'll do a little presentation. So this was Blackbeard's Jolly Roger, a man with the chalice and the spear, which was a man, no, a skeleton, which was the skeleton that was in his. This is a fake flag. No, but this is real. Like I've checked the material, and this is real. But then there were other Jolly Rogers. Each one had their own. And there is a coincidence. No, there's here we have a couple of examples of different Jolly Rogers, but there used to be another type of flag, also called the Jolly Roger, but when it was red, it would mean that no quarter would be given. So people generally hoped for a black flag and not a red flag, because if you saw a pirate ship coming towards you and you saw a red flag, it would mean that the whole crew of the ship would die and they would take the ship for themselves. This was one of the ways in which pirates took ships and pirates got ships. Some of them rented ships, as we're going to see with our next story, and some others would just take ships for themselves and change their name, rebaptize them. The Queen Anne's Revenge is one of these ships that got rebaptized. It got captured, and then it got rebaptized. And our next story for tonight, this is the last story we're going to have tonight. And in my opinion, this would be the worst pirate that ever lived. He was called Van Ten Pan, and his real name was Pierre Legrand. His nickname, meaning in French, broken wind, Van Ten Pan. He was French, which, duh, with that name, obviously. But we don't know much more about him. He was a part of the swashbucklers of the Pirates of Tortuga, and he belonged for a long time to the crew of a guy named Edward Mansfeld, one very prolific pirate. And we have a super chat from Silver Phoenix Rising. When it comes to pirate in the media, my favorite is One Piece. It's an excellent anime. It's an excellent anime series, and I agree. Yes. What would you like to say about this? Have you seen One Piece?
Oh yeah, I'm well versed in One Piece. It's like it's a saga. It's like this. I was reading One Piece before most people in the United States were into it, because I got this thing called Shonen Jump, which was like this mail-in like anime magazine that was sent in that you could order, and it had One Piece. Like it had the early One Piece elements, and this is like before graphic novels like were really big in the United States. So yeah, I was very familiar with One Piece, and it's really interesting because it's like this super uber glorification of pirates. Like these people were like criminals. Like in reality. But it like
Mhm.
really romanticizes it. And then you have like magical things like demon fruit that give people powers and stuff. And you have the whole story is enmeshed in what was his name? The major pirate that like the mythos.
Uh, Monkey D. Luffy.
No, no,
Or
he's
no, yes, I know who you're talking. The guy that dies in the
like Roger,
presentation.
like Jolly Roger or something
Jolly
like.
Roger, yes.
Yeah, he's like the main. He's like the whole story is framed about him that they're gonna find this treasure. But it's just really interesting when you really think about these pirates. Like nobody would want to meet pirates. I think
Yes.
a really powerful depiction is Captain Phillips, where you see that's like really de-glamorized, where
Mhm.
it's like these people are like really awful. So it's really interesting to see the hyper glamorization of pirates versus like the real kind of brutal truth that these people were like brigands and thieves that came in, and we would never want to meet these people in reality,
No.
you know?
Or when Hollywood puts like really beautiful women in these ships of men who have been at sea for months at a time, and it makes no sense. There were only a handful of women pirates, and they were captains. They were captains, they had the authority, because it's a dangerous place to be around with a couple hundred men at sea for months at a time. It's not a good place to be. But yeah, thank you, Phoenix Rising, for your super chat. I haven't finished seeing One Piece, but it's on Netflix, and I've been slowly making my way through it. It's a long series, but it's super fun, and it has some very interesting characteristics. But it's a little bit guilty of the thing we were talking about at the beginning, of the romanticization of pirates, but it's done in a pretty good way, because Luffy and his crew, even though they're kind of pirate, they're good people, and they don't hurt the people who don't deserve it, and these kind of things that pirates regularly tend not to do. So thank you so much for bringing this up. Glad to have you here with us. And Silver Phoenix Rising, that's a really awesome screen name.
And I agree with you 100% that the glamorization, these people like assaulted folks. These people were kind of like the worst people around. They would assault women. If women were around, they would assault them. And you're correct about that. Like a woman would have to be very strong and powerful, because if you're out on this ship, these men are going to try to assault you. And these are like men of little scruples. So that's the thing. It's interesting how we like glamorize them. And I also think of Pirates of the Caribbean. That's another like Captain Jack Sparrow and all of his adventures. And you're like, wow, this is like not really what these people did. Like these people were thieves that would go and steal. That's why they executed them in such horrible ways, is because like these
Mm-hmm.
people were really awful, and that's why I was thinking of the Somali pirates and Captain Phillips. I'm like, that's a more accurate description of what these people kind of were, that they were willing to kill and do anything to get resources. So, and that's
Yes.
the problem of capitalism. I'm sorry, I don't want to on capitalism, but that's one of the issues of capitalism, is that we don't have equity in economics, and that's what it brings rise to people like this, because they're in desperation. If we had things where people lived in a more equitable way, and people had, their Maslow hierarchy of needs met, we wouldn't have these kinds of situations. So, sorry, my
Yes.
so
No, no problem. No problem. I really like Comrade Isa. Yes, we go. All right. So, Van Pam. He belonged to the crew of Edward Mansfield for during a lot of time, and lovely Robin Webster agrees. I'm pretty sure with what you said about capitalism. But thank you, Robin. Thank you for being here. Thank you, everyone, for being here. You're what makes this show fun. Mithradate hitting us with some more facts. Where I live, there are a lot of privateers, but they are bad pirates. Yes, the crown, when we were talking about the crown, they would issue letters of marque for English privateers, because they were not pirates, they were privateers, to attack French ships. But you're there in the sea, you see French ships going on, you attack them, but then maybe you don't see a French ship for some time, but you see an English ship, and you get tempted. You get tempted. You are there in the middle of the ocean eating dried meat, and you don't even have an orange. The ship is full of rats, and you see an English ship going by, and as a good criminal, you get tempted. I mean, I would get tempted. And they started attacking their own English ships. So that's exactly what we were meaning when we were talking about that the British caused basically were victims of their own invention during the golden age of piracy. So the crew of Edward Mansfield. Under this pirate, also one of the most famous pirates of all, Henry Morgan, sailed under Edward Mansfield, and then when Edward Mansfield was no more, Henry Morgan took over the crew and went on to become the most famous pirate in history, according to some people. There's some personal preference here and there, but Bantam Pan, he didn't want to be a pirate. Bantam Pan had fled France to escape conscription by Louis XIV. At that time, one could avoid conscription if you paid a fee. But Bantam Pan didn't have any money, so he enlisted in a few buccaneer ships and ended up in Tortuga under Mansfield's crew. Unhappy with his pirate life, because after all, he hadn't enlisted due to wanting to be a pirate like many others, but because he was more of a deserter. He was more of a guy who had fled conscription. And he made this clear to the captain. He said, look, I am pirating to save enough money to go back to France and bribe the pertinent bureaucrat so as to be deleted off of the deserters list. Instead of making money and going somewhere else, he chose to go back to France and become part of the bourgeoisie. He was a pirate that wanted to be a high-class member of society. He wanted to be part of the bourgeoisie. And I find this extremely weird for a pirate. Like, after a life of freedom and the high seas, wanting to go home just to water the plants seems like a really weird thought process for me. Mansfeld's expeditions were quite successful. He was a good pirate, and they would return to Tortuga with many treasures. But the scales of the pirates would benefit the captain and the owners of the ship the most. So the sailors wouldn't make that much money at all. And the way they had to inflate their earnings was through gambling. So after the division of the booty, some pirates would buy new weapons or would spend their earnings in drinks and ladies of the night, or they would gamble away and try to earn some more. But it was hard for the people in the crew to save enough money in order to bribe some bureaucrat back in France in order to get your name removed from the deserters list. Among these gamblers was Bantam Pan, as this was the only way to violently increase the meager earnings of an expedition, but would also expose them to lose their money just as violently. So the lower scales of pirates resorted into gambling in order to maybe potentially increase their earnings and rent a ship and dedicate themselves to piracy as captains. This is where the real money is, where you get the big, big, big booty. Robin says, just capitalism on sea. Yes, exactly. So PSA, we have done a few PSAs in the past. So to all of our audience who might be wanting to become pirates after listening to this chat, be sure in a sort of vocational advice, if you want to be a pirate, it's good to be a captain and not just part of the crew. So go get yourself a vessel and storm the high seas, but try to be the captain. That's where you will make the big monies. With the
We don't
years,
condone this, by the way. We're actually anti like hype capitalism, so we don't even get just to be honest with all y'all.
yes, I mean, we have an agreement that everything said on this show is fictional, that I don't actually advocate for piracy, and that we don't condone getting married to 16-year-olds and that kind of stuff. It's just for the laughs. But yes, every time we do a PSA, you can just disregard it. So Bantam Pan had gained a reputation, and he was known as one of the most unfortunate gamblers, meaning that he would always lose his money, but also as the most insistent, which is one of the most tragic combinations of traits I have ever seen. It's sad, poor Bantam Pan. He would come back from an expedition and would try to multiply his gains, but would always lose. And to continue gambling, he wouldn't wait until a new expedition came along, but would borrow money that earned him the nickname of "Can I borrow 100 doubloons?" And when someone would lend him money, after a very short time, he would have lost it all. So when he ran out of credit, and when he ran out of money and also out of credit, he would set on another expedition, not so much to try and make some money, but to try and pay his debts. The chronist here says that on the one hand, when he set out to sea due to his debts, he did it in a foul mood. He was violent and murderous. So he would light things on fire with the disdain that was born of the picture of himself as an eternal criminal. On the other hand, when he set out with no debts, he would rob people in a good mood, on a gentleman way, and would apologize for the muggings being committed, and would happily yell, I will soon be back in France as a man of good. And I can imagine him saying this while he was choking someone for the coins in their wallet. But then again, back in Tortuga, he would gamble away his money and lose all his earnings once again in a vicious cycle. Let's see what Robin has for us here. I knew a guy that delivered yachts from a place in Texas to Miami. They crossed the Gulf of Mexico, and one time pirates took their yacht and set them afloat on the dinghy, spent 3 days on it. Wow. It's a good thing that they survived. Thank you for sharing, Robin. A little story of modern day piracy on the Tell Me That Story show. Yeah, it's hard out there in the sea.
Well, and I think there's one thing you brought up in that story that I think is important, and this is another element in capitalistic stuff, which is exploitation. Mm-hmm. These rings of gambling are really terrible because when people are gambling and stuff, particularly like legalized gambling, people just waste all of their money because they have this idea that they can make, it's a lie. They think that they can make 5, 6, 7 times the amount of money, and it gives this kind of thrill. There's a great Twilight Zone episode about that where, like from the 60s, where this guy's like, I am against gambling, and then he ends up, putting money into a slot machine, and he can't stop until he blows all of his life savings away and everything, and then he ends up dying out a horrible way. And I'm just like, people really should be aware of that. Like, Gambling is just terrible. This guy probably didn't gamble like in illegal spaces. He probably just went to like they didn't probably have that, but I'm just thinking like just that system is just really awful because it can ruin your life, you know.
Yeah, the Chronicle didn't say exactly what they played, but from context and my intuition tells me that they would have played some sort of dice game or potentially some card games. But yes, they were not legal gambling things, and owing money to these people from your debts could get you killed, and it was a risk to do a lot of the things that they did. But when you're in this life, it's hard to do something else, especially if your dream is to stop being a pirate and going back to France to be part of the bourgeoisie. uh, Sydney Raptor says, I am officially a pirate according to the High Court of the Solomon Islands, an ex parte ruling after I left the islands in a fishing trawler I had repossessed. Welcome, Sydney. Good to have you with us. That's a funny thing, right? That you're classified as a pirate for repossessing something. I'm sorry. I if I'm not supposed to laugh, I do apologize. But to me, the idea sounds funny because I'm not involved in it. And if I laugh inappropriately, I do apologize. Like with most everything else in this show. So, uh, he ran out of money when he la 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 la. The other, oh, okay, here. Sorry, I got lost in the script, and it's I had that little reflection at the end of the show, but I'm glad you brought that up because you put it into words a little bit better than I could, on the dangers and the consequences of this type of gambling, especially in these situations that you're gambling more than your money, you're potentially gambling your life. It's very hard. So thank you for that, Isa. So something unexpected happened after an expedition of Mansville's crew in Santa Catalina, and having paid his creditors, 50 doubloons were left in Bantam Pan's pocket. He gambled and won 12,000. Oh, uh, no, I hadn't seen that, Robin. Give me just a second. The pirates were killers, thieves, vandalizers, etc. But did they believe in gods? Were they Christians, Muslims, and other religions? Did
I can
they
answer
attack
this.
each other of beliefs, over beliefs? Go
I
ahead,
can,
Ethan.
I can answer this too. I had investigated this from before and thought about this. We talked about it. So Sir Francis Drake was a Christian privateer, and he, these privateers were pirates. So we have to understand it's like they're synonymous. So that's
Yes.
the important thing. Henry Morgan, who we talked about as well, was a
Mhm.
privateer and a pirate. Jean Bart was a French one. Anne Bonnet and Mary Read, they were female Christian pirates.
Mhm.
Um, so a lot of these folks, that was a part of what they were. Then there were definitely a lot of Muslim pirates. Like, see, one thing about me, I'm
Yes.
going to be very accountable about this. I'm not going to be like, oh, Muslims were just perfect, great people. They did some terrible stuff. There was, there's the East African slave trade, which is probably connected with piracy as well. But there are the
Yes.
Barbary pirates. The Barbary pirates were from North Africa, which is part of my ancestry too, North African. They were from the 16th to the 19th century, and they were in Tripoli, Algiers, Tunis, and Morocco. And they were connected actually to the founding in America as well, because there was a conversation between these Barbary pirates and Thomas Jefferson. So there were Barbary wars. In the 19th century, their piracy and their ransom demands were put to an end. And we talked about the Somali pirates. If you watched Captain Phillips, you'll see that they were Muslim. And examples of Muslim pirates were like Hayreddin Barbarossa. There's Redbeard, who is the older brother of
Mhm.
Barbarossa. There's Dragut or Targut Reis, and there's Ali Bichen. These are a couple examples of Muslim pirates. So they were of all different religions, and I think what people do in these spaces is just like we know with people who are like extremists in religious ideology, they will make excuses for all their bad behaviors. This is what people will do. So we have to understand that. I'm not going to say that the religion is saying that, but their interpretation of the religion they justify. Like there was like, people who came from Mexico, they believed in this saint. They created a saint called El Verde that protected drug missions,
Yes.
So people will do that. They will make up stuff. They will make up saints. They will make up prophets. They will make up anything so they can do the bad things that they're doing. So,
Well, there's down here, I don't remember what it is, but there's in Argentina and Uruguay, there's a patron saint of the thieves and robbers. So yeah, and we have to remember that at one point, almost everyone was religious. So any kind of person that you think was probably religious. It's and still are. I mean, but it's not a representation. It's not that the religion makes them do this. In some cases, yes, it does, but in others, it's just a coincidence that people who are religious do stuff. But I don't think we can actually blame the religion. But said, excellent question, and thank you so much, Robin, for the catch. I had totally missed that comment. So yeah, it's that. What an awesome show that everyone participates in, and we can get these wonderful talks and pieces of data. That I love it. I love every one of you. Thank you so much. All right, so he got 50 doubloons left after paying his debts and gambled, and for once he won. He won 12,000 doubloons. He started yelling he didn't need any more. He could stop pirating, and he was returning to France. Very well. He prepared his journey back. His crewmates congratulated him. There was a party. He moved all his stuff to a ship that in 6 hours, he would set sail for France. And he went on to the tavern to say goodbye with a glass of rum. But, dun, 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 someone said, "Hey, Bantampam, come here. Want to play a few rounds?" And as we can all be predicting right now, Bantampan accepted. He started off winning. His opponent had to give him papers that would allow him to claim some shipments of sugar. And in the enthusiasm, Bantampan continued gambling and continued through the night between winning and the rum, and the ship sailed without him. By the end of that gambling session, he had lost everything back again. And desperate as he was, he enlisted on another pirate crew, this time belonging to a guy called Lolones, a man who was known for eating the hearts of his opponents. One time, this captain fought with the Spanish in a place called Campeche, and all his crew got killed. But Lolones camouflaged himself between the corpses with sand and blood, and later and basically escaped death that way, sort of like Peter Millard in The Hunger Games. But yeah, he did the classical hiding between the dead bodies so that the Spanish couldn't find him. Later, the Spanish threw a party in celebration of having killed Lolones, and it is said that he attended this party disguised as a Spanish man. What I find quite funny is the idea of disguising oneself as being from another nationality. I don't think how could you achieve that? But then I always think that he must have stolen like a naval uniform from one of the corpses, and that's the way he disguised himself. So L'Olonnais, final piece of data from this guy. His life ended up badly. He ended up running into cannibals in Central America, and he himself got eaten in a sort of poetic justice. He used to eat his opponent's hearts and then got eaten himself. That's what I call justice. Some people would say divine justice. I would say poetic justice in a sense, but I digress. So Van Tampan on an expedition to Maracaibo with L'Olonnais, Maracaibo in Venezuela, present day Venezuela at least, managed to get the funds that he needed to go back to France. So before embarking, he got an interview with Monsieur d'Ogeron and exchanged his doubloons for a mortgage title on a French bank. Got a passage mark on a decent ship, arrived on France, and opened an import business with a Portuguese business partner. This import business would bring shipments from the Caribbean into France, but one day, talking with his business partner, the Portuguese, they thought that it would be advantageous to have one of them there over in the Caribbean to acquire the merchandise at the point of origin. And as you might probably be guessing by now, what did Van Tampan do? They gambled. They gambled for who would go to the Caribbean. Oh, sure. I'll put that.
Thank you
yes,
so much. I just I hear the name, but I'm trying to see how do you spell it.
Oh, yes, it's in French. Hold on, let me get my window. The name is Van, as in wind, and Pan. And Pan. And his real name, I have it right here. Let me put it that for you because it was, oh my God, it was a pain to find this guy. I have heard of him a while back, and it was a pain to track him down, but I finally did. Van Tampan, there we go. This is the name, Van Tampan. Oh, this was his nickname, Broken Wind, and his real name was Pierre Legrand. Yeah, Isa asked me on our private chat to make it a little bit clear for everyone, but it's really hard to pronounce. Yeah. So they gambled. They gambled for who would go to the Caribbean to establish sort of a local office in order to procure merchandise directly on site. And obviously, we all know that by this point, Van Tampan lost, and he set sail for the Caribbean. So when he was on his journey back to the Caribbean, he got attacked by English pirates at the exit of the Canal de la Mancha, or the English Canal, for those of you Spanish-speaking people, English-speaking people, I'm sorry. Van Tampan defended the ship until a cannonball sank the ship, and as pretty much everyone did at that time, he died of drowning, basically, because a lot of these people couldn't swim. And in general, if your ship got sunk, people usually died. At this time, there weren't many chances of getting rescued by someone else. So this is the story of Van Tampan. Yes, the translation could be wind in sail, but the chronicle that I consulted said that his name was attributed to be broken wind.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm not sure. I'm not French.
Oh, I'm done,
I
but
don't speak French at all. The only thing I can say is oui and baguette.
comme c'est comme ça.
Oh,
I still want
voulez-vous coucher avec moi? That's the
to.
other one I can say. Yes.
I spent
Uh,
some time in West Africa and they speak French there, so I pick up
yeah.
some there.
So
Oh,
this was Bantampan, a pirate who didn't want to be a pirate. He wanted to be a bourgeois. And we typically get things like this, but usually the other way. The person that mops floors wants to be a businessman, but it also happens the other way. I like to think of, for example, a poet who dreams of being a mechanic, and in his daydreams, they tell to themselves, ah, if only I was just hammering this wheel into the rim, what a life I would have. And it's a funny thought, knowing that someone wants to do something else. In any case, it happens when people want to aim higher, and some people who want to quote unquote aim lower, higher and lower, both between quotes, right? We appreciate everyone and their profession, but yeah, it's a funny thought to me, the idea of wanting to be something else in any direction.
I
And
agree.
who would you like to dedicate this chat to?
I would dedicate it to all the victims who faced this piracy. They didn't deserve it. It was not earned. Innocent people, all the innocent people who suffered from this didn't deserve to be looted and, assaulted. So, of course, I'm into diversity, equity, inclusion. So that's an important thing for me that these people, they probably died, they probably were killed, their livelihoods were ruined because people wanted to steal from them. And I think that is sad. And I also want to, kind of think about, the processes of those who are gambling and have face addiction, because this is addiction. Clearly, what
Mhm.
this man, Vantan or Pierre Legrand, was facing was massive addiction. He could not stop himself. And it's too bad they didn't have systems to help deal with addiction at that time. They probably didn't even understand it. So this poor man was afflicted by addiction and he couldn't stop. And yeah, gambling addiction is horrendous. All of these kind of addictions are just really tragic and sad. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a good dedication. Thank you very much. And Robin Webster gifted one Matters Now membership. Let's see who she targeted this time. And it was given to Christopher Fisher. That's funny. When we're talking about pirates and the person with the last name Fisher, which was something that pirates did a lot, fishing for meat and for sustenance. In pirate ships, the kitchen was a very dangerous place. Just like a bonus tip that I encountered within my preparation for the talk tonight. The kitchen was dangerous, and they used to be made out of stone because, as we know, old ships would be sealed with tar, which is highly flammable, and there would be also gunpowder laying around and that kind of thing. And usually, a fire in a pirate ship would mean certain doom for everyone, unless they were coincidentally saved by a rainstorm very quickly. But yeah, the kitchen in pirate ships was a very dangerous place, and yeah, the fact that Christopher Fisher got the membership, that made me giggle a little bit. Thank you so much, Robin, for being the MVP of the audience as usual. And I would like to dedicate this to the two pirate women which you mentioned, Anne Bonny and Mary. What's her last name? You're muted.
Wait 1 second. I put it in my notes. It is Mary Reed.
Mary Reed and Anne Bonny, who, when they got captured, they got pregnant, so they would delay their execution, and that's a very smart move if you get captured while doing piracy as a woman. I would like to dedicate it to them because they made their way in a world full of men. They asserted their dominance, and they were pirate captains, which is something to be very proud of, at least in some kind of sense. I mean, you know what I mean. And also to Tom Hanks, who played a victim to one of these pirates. And we are definitely going to, at some point, have another chat about pirates because it's a topic I absolutely love. And there's so many people to talk about, as we mentioned today, Captain Morgan, these two women, the pirates of the Mediterranean, some pirates from the Middle East. There's also pirates in China, Malaysia, Japan. There's so much that I had to make a choice, and I chose these three for tonight, but we're definitely going at some point to do a part 2. So, any final thoughts before we are on our way tonight, Isa?
I do have a question. Can we just review the three, like give just like to summarize who are the three pirates that we discussed so we can just kind of like, bring it to the whole, just so for folks who may have become a little later.
Today we have Blackbeard, who was one of the worst. He applied for a pardon and then went back in his word. He married a 16-year-old and went back to pirating. He used to wear wigs below his hat so that his face would appear to be smoking, and he ended up getting his ship sunk and getting killed, executed. He was said to have the devil be a part of his ship. And then we talked about John Gibbs, who was born in Rhode Island to a wealthy family, but as it usually happens, wealthy parents give birth to a criminal son, nothing we haven't heard before. He pillaged all the way from the coast of Florida to Buenos Aires, enlisted in a couple of wars, Argentina and Brazil war in the side of Argentina, and France and Algeria in the side of France. But the first war he continued. He's a war hero in Argentina. And then when he went to the French and Algerian war, he got bored, as he had done once before at the beginning of the chat, and then went back to the US, stole a ship in New Orleans, and absconded with a barrel full of coins. He was caught and hanged in New York. And then Van Tan Pan, who became a pirate fleeing from conscription by Louis XIV. And his dream was to make enough money to be able to bribe a bureaucrat in France in order to get his name deleted from the deserters list. And he wanted to be a bourgeoisie, part of the bourgeoisie in France. And he finally met his demise going back to the Caribbean over a lost bet with his Portuguese business partner after having gone through many, many trials and tribulations to get the money to go to France, and ended up getting his ship sunk when he was traveling back to the Caribbean by English pirates. And those are the three that we covered today. Any other final thoughts?
Oh, I'm sorry. What was the second one? The Argentinian one?
The Argentinian one, John Gibbs.
John Gibbs. Okay, cool.
I tried. it's very hard to get like the correct information here. I tried locating the name of Jans Gibbs, and I did like 2 hours of research over Google, and I couldn't find him. I need to do some more digging because I think there's like a pronunciation thing. I heard this over someone speaking in Spanish, and I'm pretty sure that their pronunciation is not the correct one. So it took me 2 hours to finally locate Van Tempang, because the guy was pronouncing it like Van Tempang, and it was really hard tracking down. But I need some clearing up, so I will go on and try to locate exactly the guy that we're talking about, the Jans Gibbs. But on part number 2, I probably have enough time to get it correctly, and we might do a note on that, or I might leave it in the comments as I have done before. Robin Webster tells us Pittsburgh baseball team would use tactics to steal from other teams, so often they were called Pirates and adopted the names. And Z Alpha 3000 says, "Ahoy, Max! Enjoy the parlay. May you have full sales and calm seas ahead. Fare thee well, Isa." Thank you so much. Zed, your question today was on point. Thank you so much for participating and making this show great. And with that, we're going to be on our way. We're going to set sail for tonight, and we'll meet you back here again next Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, for another episode of the Tell Me That Story show. Thank you so much, Isa. It's always a pleasure to have your reflections and your insight. You're very knowledgeable, and it's absolutely always a pleasure hearing you about these things. And thank you to Silver Phoenix Rising for his $10 super chat and reminding us to talk a little bit about One Piece. Fantastic collaboration to the show. Thank you everyone for being here. Tomorrow, be sure to tune in to Matters Now, because we have Oz's show at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and then we're going to have a pre-show and after show. And we are definitely expecting some craziness with Dustin debating MC Toon. I talked to MC Toon yesterday on his stream, and he said that he's going to simulcast the debate on his channel. So after he's done with his the super chats in his channel, if we're still going in the after show here, which we probably will, he'll come on and join us. So I'm super excited for the pre-show and the after show for tomorrow's debate. 7:15 we start the pre-show, and the after show will begin as soon as the debate is over, as we have you accustomed here on Matters Now. You are Victoria, just joining us now. Matt uses my my emoji with the vinyl. Thank you so much, Victoria. And Isa's emoji, story time with Isa, which was great. We're preparing, we'll have the third part of those stories pretty soon. And we'll get a few shows scheduled for you. Thank you everyone for being there, for making this show an absolute delight to do and to hang out with you. And remember that if you want to propose a topic that you would like to get the Tell Me That Story treatment, you can always send a super chat and we'll look into it. And let's say if you send a $10 super chat and you would like to come join us on stage and hang out with us during the chat and maybe give your insights to some of the things that we talk about, we can definitely make that happen. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you, Isa, once again. And we'll catch you on the next Tell Me That Story show.